Most ghost stories sound like jokes until you meet the people who lived through them. They don't smile. They don't laugh about it. They talk like someone who came back from war. Quiet, tired, and still unsure if it's really over. That's what makes the Enfield case different. This wasn't one person claiming they saw a shadow. This was a family, neighbors, police, reporters, and investigators all saying they witnessed something they could not explain. And every single one of them swore it was real. The whole thing happened in 1977 in a regular council house in North London. Nothing fancy, small place, thin walls, normal family. A single mother, Peggy Hodgson, doing her best to raise 4 kids. No rich lifestyle, no paranormal obsession, no weird occult books lying around. Just a working-class family trying to get through life like everyone else. If you walked past that house back then, you wouldn't notice it. 284 Green Street. Looked like every other brick house in the row. But behind those walls, something was waiting to be noticed. It started quietly, little noises at night. Kids complaining about knocking on the walls. Random stuff going missing, turning up in weird places. Most parents would say the same thing Peggy did. Stop mucking about and go to bed. Because kids lie, right? Kids crave attention. And there were 4 of them, all young, buzzing with energy. Who would believe them anyway? It sounded like imagination. Until the night it didn't. August 30th. Late evening. The kids tried to sleep, but something felt wrong. The room was cold even though it wasn't winter. And suddenly, the heavy chest of drawers in the girls' bedroom began to move. Not a little wobble. It slid across the floor like someone was pushing it with force. You can imagine the kids' reaction. Straight panic. Not aha spooky house. Panic. Real fear. The kind that freezes you in place. Peggy rushed in, angry at first, thinking they were messing around. Then she saw it herself. The furniture shifted again, like it was being shoved by invisible hands. She tried to push it back, and it felt like something on the other side was pushing harder. That's the moment her expression changed. From annoyed mom to someone who knew this wasn't normal. Even if she didn't want to admit it, something was inside her home, and it wasn't leaving. They tried to ignore it. They didn't have money to move. It's not like you can just say, a ghost showed up, vamos embora, and walk away. Rent exists. Life doesn't care if you're haunted. But the house cared. The sounds got louder. Knocking turned into loud bangs. Objects started flying. Voices whispered when no one else was in the room. And the kids, especially 11-year-old Janet, began acting strange. Not kid being dramatic. Strange. More like something was watching her and waiting. Neighbors heard the noise too. One even saw a chair move by itself. A police officer later claimed she saw it as well. That's when things change. It wasn't a family story anymore. It became a case, a real one. And soon the media showed up, then paranormal researchers. Word traveled fast. Across England, across the US, even in Brazil, people were talking about the haunted house in Enfield. People called it evil. Others called it a hoax, but everyone wanted to know the truth. And here's the thing, when skeptics came to debunk it, some left confused and some left scared. This wasn't a random ghost rumor. It was shaping up to be one of the most documented hauntings in history. And the worst part for the Hodgson family, it had only just begun. Most hauntings don't explode on day one. They creep in slowly, like mold you don't notice until it's everywhere. And for the Hodgsons, things got worse fast. After the furniture moved, everyone tried acting normal. Kids went to school, mom went to work. Life continued like nothing happened. But the house didn't stop. Every night, the knocking returned. Not random taps. It had a pattern, like someone answering questions nobody asked. Bango pausa bang bang. It came from the walls, from the ceiling, sometimes from right behind the kids' beds. You don't sleep peacefully when your house starts talking back to you. At first, the neighbors thought they were being dramatic. Who wouldn't? People talk. Kids lie. Families stress out and see things. Everyone loves a spooky tale until it becomes real. Then the neighbors heard it too. They described loud crashes when nothing was falling. Strange thumps like someone jumping off furniture. And voices, muffled, distant, definitely not the kids playing. One neighbor later said, it sounded like someone was walking in their house. You'd look inside and no one was moving. That's when the mood changed from curiosity to concern. Peggy tried to stay calm. She was a hardworking mom living on benefits, trying to survive. Single parenting isn't easy. Single parenting in a haunted house, God help you. But the worst part was what started happening to Janet. It always goes for the vulnerable. Every scary story works like that. Kids, the youngest, the soft target. Like whatever's out there enjoys the challenge. Janet started sleepwalking. She'd wake up shouting without knowing why. She'd complain about hands grabbing her in the dark. Her siblings said they saw her talking to an empty corner. Sometimes laughing, sometimes whispering. Sometimes angry like she was arguing with someone who wasn't there. People later called it attention-seeking. Sure, kids pull pranks, kids lie sometimes. But nobody fakes being dragged out of bed. Because that's what happened next. One night, she was thrown, not rolled, not shuffled, thrown from her bed. Her sister screamed. Peggy ran in. Janet was crying, terrified, saying, "It's not me. Something's pushing me." People say, kids are dramatic. Yeah, but most kids don't bruise themselves just for clout. There was no TikTok in 1977. No likes, nothing to gain. Only fear. Things escalated so much that Peggy ran to the neighbors begging for help. Not embarrassed, not shy, full panic mode. Because when your daughter is flying across the room, you don't care what people think. The neighbors checked the house. No intruder. No loose objects. Nothing out of place except terrified children. They stayed for a bit, trying to comfort the family. Then they heard it. Loud knocking from inside the house, even though everyone was standing still. That's when the neighbors called the police. Now here's where things get real interesting. Ghost believers don't impress people. But when cops show up, whole different level. A female constable checked the house. She heard the noises too. Then she watched a chair slide across the floor by itself. Slow, clean movement, no strings, no tricks. She filed a statement saying so. To this day, she never retracted it. Police don't admit paranormal stuff for fun. It's literally career suicide. So when an officer signs her name on paper saying, "I saw furniture move on its own," you pay attention. But what could cops do? They aren't demon hunters. They can't arrest a ghost. So they left basically saying, "Yeah, your house is creepy, good luck." Imagine that. You ask for help. The pros show up, witness weird stuff, and then they're like, right then, cheers, hope it stops. After that, the media got involved. London papers love drama. Within days, reporters and photographers showed up. They thought it'd be another silly story. Haunted house family losing the plot. Clickbait existed long before the internet. Then they saw things too. Marbles flying across the room without anyone touching them. A plate launched off a table. Voices echoing from empty rooms. Beds shaking. And the kids, especially Janet, looking exhausted, frightened, and confused. Not the kind of acting a kid holds up for weeks. Every single witness said the same thing. This wasn't a normal house. Researchers from the Society for Psychical Research came next. Scientists, psychologists, investigators. Not ghost hunters with YouTube channels. Legit academics. They tried recording sounds. They ran tests. They watched the family day and night, and the activity got bolder around them. Knocks answered questions. 1 for no, 2 for yes. Objects vibrated on tables. Cold spots appeared in warm rooms. And Janet started saying she felt something inside her. Like someone else is here. Voices began coming through her. Deep, rough, nothing like an 11-year-old girl. At first just murmurs, then clearer as days passed. People later argued she faked it. Try this talk from your throat for hours without hurting your voice. Now imagine a child doing that night after night without losing her voice or collapsing. Doctors checked her. Speech experts checked her. Nobody could explain it, to that the fact that the voice said things a child shouldn't know. Descriptions of dying, old man attitude, curses. Laughing at people. Calling them idiots. And sometimes begging for help, like someone who died angry and got stuck, and now this kid is his radio. Some days things would calm down. Family would think maybe it's over. Then suddenly everything would crash back, louder, stronger, like something enjoyed giving hope before ripping it away. Peggy couldn't sleep. Kids barely slept. The house turned into a battleground. A normal life fighting a force nobody understood. And then came the moment that convinced almost everyone. Janet claimed she saw an old man in her room. Gray hair, loose skin, staring at her from the dark. She screamed. Her brother swore he saw him too. Seconds later, both kids watched a heavy dresser shake violently. Janet tried to run out. She didn't make it. A mattress lifted and slammed against her like someone was trying to pin her down. No kid fakes that while crying for their mother. People in the neighborhood whispered. Some prayed. Some avoided the street entirely. No one wanted to risk bringing whatever was in that house into their own lives. Even church people were nervous. Some pastors didn't want to get involved. Imagine that. Men of God saying, "Yeah, not touching that." That tells you everything you need to know. Bit by bit, the haunting wasn't just in the house anymore. It was in the family, in their minds, in their energy, and in Janet most of all. The case had grown beyond a weird noise or creepy furniture. People around the country were talking about it. Researchers were baffled. Doctors confused. Neighbors terrified. And through all of it, a terrified 11-year-old girl sat at the center of it, losing control of her life day by day. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a Halloween story. This was something darker, something old, angry, and determined not to leave. And as the chaos spread, one question hung over everyone watching: if this isn't a haunting, then what the hell is it? Because whatever was in that housey, it wasn't done yet. Most hauntings never make it beyond family gossip. A weird noise, a shadow in the hallway, a creepy feeling. People brush it off. Life moves on. But the Hodgson haunting didn't stay inside that house. It spread like wildfire, from neighbors to police to newspapers to researchers to pretty much the entire country. And once the media stepped in, things stopped being a private nightmare and turned into a public circus. It began almost quietly. A journalist from the Daily Mirror got sent to check out a spooky house story. Probably rolled his eyes on the way there. London papers love weird drama. Haunted pubs, cursed roads, ghost sightings. It sells. Half of it ends up being cats knocking things over or people hearing pipes echo through old walls. So these reporters walk in, expecting a slow day, maybe a silly headline. They see a normal working-class family, worn-out furniture, sleepy kids, tired mom. Nothing about the place screamed haunted hotel or Demon lives here. Then the house spoke. A loud crash echoed from upstairs before anyone had even started asking questions. Not some little creak. A full slam, like someone dropped a wardrobe. The photographer, a guy named Graham Morris, went running toward the noise, thinking one of the kids fell. Instead, he said he watched a toy fly past his face and smash into the wall. Not fall, not bounce. Fly fast. And the dude wasn't some TikTok horror storyteller chasing views. This was a legit photojournalist, old school dude. Suit jacket, cigarette in pocket, energy. Someone who doesn't scare easy. He later said the moment it happened, his skin felt ice cold. Not the foo spooky cold, but the something wrong is in this room with us, cold. Then the marbles started. You know those little glass marbles kids used to play with back in the day? They began firing across the floor like someone flicked them with force. The reporters heard them hit the walls. Sharp taps. But the weird part, when they picked the marbles up, they were warm. Like they'd been held in someone's hand or something's. Nobody was touching them. Nobody was even close. At that point, the journalists were done playing skeptic. You don't get paid enough to watch invisible hands yeet toys at your skull. The head reporter called his office and said, "Yeah, we've got something here." In British tone, probably like, "Mate, you won't believe this." Proper mad. When the story hit the paper, it blew up. People love this stuff. Fear spreads fast. Mystery spreads faster. Everyone wanted a piece of the haunting. And the family, they didn't get fame, they got chaos. More reporters showed up. Paranormal societies showed up. Random neighbors tried to sneak into, see the ghost. Some came to pray, others came to gossip, others to laugh like it was entertainment. Imagine hell breaking loose in your home and strangers crowding your front door like it's a football match. Brazil slang moment, Paracia terceta em final de campeonato. Cheering, pushing, grabbing at windows like they were watching a show. People can be cruel when they think something isn't real for you. Only fun for them. But not everyone was laughing. Because when more people entered the house, activity got worse, louder, aggressive. Like whatever was inside didn't like being observed. Furniture shook harder. Voices got clearer. Cold spots turned into freezing shivers that made breath visible. Even skeptics walked out looking pale, like they'd seen a ghost they didn't believe in 5 minutes ago. That's when two members of the Society for Psychical Research stepped in, Guy Lyon Playfair and Maurice Gross. These weren't YouTube ghost bros with spirit boxes. They were serious men, researchers. Paranormal in theory, scientific in method. Maurice took the lead, and honestly, the guy got obsessed, in a sad way. He had lost his daughter not long before this case. She died in a motorcycle accident. He was still grieving, shattered inside. So when he heard about voices, spirits, afterlife activity, he went all in. Like maybe, just maybe, if this haunting was real, his daughter's spirit existed somewhere too. Pain makes us believe things logic rejects. But grief doesn't make paranormal events happen. It just makes people determined to understand them. Maurice moved into the house literally. Slept in that haunted place, recorded every noise, took notes day and night. Hours and hours of tape. Knocking voices, screams, whispers, conversations with something no one could see. At first, he thought he could reason with whatever was there. You know how UK folks sometimes bargain with ghosts like it's a Tesco refund counter. Can you knock twice for yes, one for no? Cheers. And unbelievably, it answered. Maurice would say, "Are you a spirit?" Bang, bang. "Did you live here?" Bang, bang. "Are you trying to hurt the children?" Silence. Then one loud bang. Not yes, not no. More like, "Mind your business." Smart haunting are way scarier than dumb haunting. The press called Maurice obsessed. Skeptics called him gullible. But here's the thing, skeptics weren't the ones watching a child levitate off her bed. Yeah, that happened. Two separate witnesses watched Janet rise from her mattress like someone pulled her up by the hair. Not jump, not bounce. Lift, mid-air, then get flung to the side. People say she faked photos of it, that she jumped. But explain her hitting the wardrobe so hard it shook the room. Explain doctors finding bruises no kid could self-inflict without crying in pain for hours. Explain why the girl begged. Make it stop. Instead of performing for cameras. No child wants bruises, hospital trips, and strangers staring at them like a circus freak. Meanwhile, the voices kept growing stronger. Janet would sit still, eyes glazed, then a growling voice came from deep in her throat, raspy, old, angry, foul-mouthed, calling Maurice names, mocking people in the room, laughing, threatening. Just a kid doing a voice, people said. All right, try speaking in a demon rasp for hours without damaging your throat. Professional voice actors can't do it. Most singers blow their voice out fast. Doctors checked her vocal cords. They found she wasn't using them to make the sound. It came from deeper, like the false vocal folds vibrating instead. Someone once taped her mouth, filled it with water, and the voice still spoke. Try faking that, mate. Now we reach the part skeptics hate, when the voice revealed information no one in the house knew. The entity called itself Bill Wilkins, said he was an old man who died in that house, described how he died. I went blind. Then I had a hemorrhage and fell asleep, and I died in the chair downstairs. Later, a man came forward saying his dad, Bill Wilkins, really did die in that house exactly like the spirit said. Coincidence? Maybe. Lucky guess. Bro, what kid in London just randomly invents a blind man dying of a brain bleed in a chair years before she was born? Nah. At this point, researchers didn't know what they were fighting. Ghost, poltergeist, demon, trauma, hoax, possession. Nobody had a clean answer. Some nights, the house went calm, almost peaceful, like everyone could breathe again. Janet would smile, siblings would relax. Maurice drank tea at the kitchen table, thinking maybe it was over. Chaos, lights flickering, crashes upstairs, voices yelling through walls, plates thrown, beds shaking, Janet screaming like something was tearing inside her, terrifying, unpredictable waves. The house felt alive, not alive like breathing, alive like watching. That's when investigators started arguing. Some claimed Janet was manipulating events. Others swore no child could fake half of what happened. British skeptics called the case mass hysteria. American researchers said it was classic demonic mimicry. Brazilians would have just said mano, sai dessa casa logo, pelo amor de Deus. Bro, leave the house now for the love of God. But the Hodgsons couldn't leave. They were poor. Council housing. You don't just dip. You don't have plan B when you're barely feeding 4 kids. So they endured it, night after night, month after month. At school, teachers reported Janet falling asleep in class, twitching like she was being startled awake by nightmares even when awake. Kids bullied her, saying she was crazy. Some were scared of her. Some called her possessed. That girl didn't get fame, she got trauma. Meanwhile, Maurice lost himself in the mystery. He believed helping Janet would help him deal with losing his daughter. But trauma doesn't play nice. Something in that house chewed on his grief like fuel. He wasn't alone either. Guy Playfair got sucked in too. He believed the case was real, but he also started worrying the entity enjoyed attention. Like it fed on drama. Every visitor was a meal. Every interview was energy. Every argument was power, and the media, they kept coming. Flashbulbs popping, reporters shouting questions, newspapers calling the kids possessed sisters, and ghost girls. Imagine being 11, tired, scared, confused, and the world wants horror content from your suffering. That's the darkest part of all this. Evil doesn't always wear horns. Sometimes it looks like a crowd enjoying someone's fear. Eventually, something changed. The activity grew violent, not chaotic, playful throwing things, but targeted, scratches on Janet's body, bites that left marks, her being pinned down, her voice screaming in languages she didn't know. And the worst part, moments where she said she wasn't in control anymore. She once told Maurice, I feel like there's something inside me, and when it wants to talk, I go away. Real or not, that's terrifying psychology. Doctors were called. Priests were called. Council authorities were called. Everyone had theories. Nobody had solutions. The haunting reached its peak. Appliances turning on and off, chairs thrown, neighbors refusing to come near, witness reports piling up. And like every good horror escalation, the Warrens eventually heard about it. But before they arrived, before the famous paranormal demonologists stepped into Enfield, the haunting had already become a living nightmare. A working-class family, grieving researcher, a terrified child. Surrounded by believers, doubters, cameras, priests, skeptics, and something unseen laughing in the shadows, because whatever lived in that house enjoyed the attention. And the more the world watched, the stronger it seemed to get. This wasn't just a haunting anymore. It was a stage. Whatever it really was had an audience. And it wasn't finished, not even close. When the Warrens arrived in Enfield, things didn't magically calm down. If anything, the house felt heavier. The tension was different now. It wasn't just creepy noises and levitation stories anymore. It felt personal. Like something in that house didn't like outsiders, especially people who understood what it was. Ed and Lorraine Warren weren't celebrities yet. They were experienced, yes, but they weren't the movie Warrens. They walked into that small two-story council house the same way you walk into a room that already decided it hates you. The air was thick, stale, like breath held too long. And the moment they stepped inside, Lorraine felt it. She later said the energy there wasn't confused or playful like some hauntings. It was calculated, intelligent, hungry. Peggy looked exhausted. Hollow eyes, trembling hands. The kids were quieter now. Not curious, not shocked, just tired. Trauma ages kids in a way time can't. Lorraine knelt to greet them, but even she could tell, these weren't children living through a haunting. These were children surviving something. Janet, especially, stood out. Pale, sunken eyes, shoulders tense, jaw tight like she was bracing for impact. She didn't run to tell the Warrens what's happening. She didn't beg for help. She just stood there watching, like she already knew nobody could fix this. Ed walked through the halls slowly, touching the walls, listening to the creaks, the low, distant knocks. Not nervous, just careful. The house was quiet, but not a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of silence that feels like someone is holding their breath right next to your ear. He turned to Lorraine and murmured, almost under his breath, "It's here." And just like that, the Warrens joined the nightmare. They began with interviews, asking the kids questions, checking details, trying to see if the story stayed consistent. And it did. Even under pressure, even tired, even scared, the story never changed. The voices, the furniture moving, the cold spots, the sudden rage in Janet. Lorraine watched Janet as she spoke. Her hands twitched. Her gaze drifted sometimes, like she was hearing something distant, something nobody else could hear. At first, nothing dramatic happened. Hours went by. Whispering footsteps upstairs, faint knocks on the radiators. Enough to unsettle any normal household, but not enough to scream, demonic case. Then nighttime came. That's when Enfield always bared its teeth. They gathered in the living room. Peggy stayed close to her kids. The Warrens took notes, spoke softly, keeping the atmosphere grounded, calm. But the house didn't want calm. It wanted chaos. Around 2 a.m. a sudden chill filled the room. Not a normal draft. A full body, deep bone cold. Lorraine's breath frosted for a moment. The lights flickered. A groan echoed from the upstairs bedroom. A heavy, dragging sound across the ceiling, like furniture being shoved, but slow, deliberate. Everyone froze. Peggy whispered, voice shaking, "It's starting." A thump. Then another. From upstairs, a crash so loud the walls shook. They ran to the staircase, but halfway up they stopped. Janet was standing at the top, back turned, body slouched forward like her bones didn't know how to hold her properly. Her head tilted unnaturally to the side. Lorraine called gently, "Janet." No response, just a soft, low vibration sound, almost like someone growling deep in their throat. Then her head snapped toward them, too fast to be natural. Her eyes didn't look like a child's eyes anymore. They were dark, blank, like someone else was using them as windows. A man's voice came out of her, raspy, harsh, layered like multiple voices speaking through one throat. "This is my house." Peggy broke down, crying right there. Her youngest started screaming. Ed moved forward slowly, not aggressive but steady. "What do you want?" Ed asked. The voice laughed. A dry, bitter, hollow sound. "They're mine." Janet suddenly collapsed, body loose, like strings cut. The Warrens rushed up, helped her, calm but shaken. They moved her to the living room again. She woke up confused, crying, saying she didn't remember anything. They needed evidence, and that night gave them plenty. Furniture moved. Voices responded to questions. A toy block floated from one side of the room to the other. Not thrown, floated. Lorraine tried to maintain faith, but something about this case shook her. This wasn't a spirit unwilling to move on. This wasn't a trapped soul. This thing was malicious, calculating, and fully aware of the attention it had drawn. They tried prayer. The Lord's Prayer barely made it past the second line before the knocks started again, not random, in rhythm. Mocking. Taunting. Each knock felt like a challenge. "You think you can chase me out?" The room got darker, even with the lights on. Shadows thickened. One photograph on the wall slowly turned by itself. A chair slid across the floor. The temperature dropped again. Peggy started whispering prayers under her breath. Janet clawed at her arms like something crawled under her skin. Lorraine had seen demonic cases before, but something here felt different. She didn't just feel a presence, she felt watched, studied, like the entity wasn't reacting, it was learning, testing them. Later that night, when everyone tried to rest, Janet began thrashing in her sleep, screaming, laughing, crying, her voice switching tones like she wasn't choosing how to talk. At one point she sat up and whispered clearly, "He says he's not alone. He says there are many." Lorraine's stomach dropped. It tried to calm Janet, but she wasn't hearing him. She stared at the corner of the room as if someone was standing there, staring back. Then she shrieked and pointed. "He's there! Right there! He's angry! He wants you out!" Nobody else saw anything, but everyone felt it. A suffocating wave of dread hit the room. Ed later said it felt like standing in front of something ancient, cruel, and completely detached from human emotion. They prayed again, harder this time, and somewhere in the middle of those prayers, the activity slowed. Not because the entity left, but because it got bored. Or because it knew it had already done enough. This wasn't victory. It felt like the house just went silent to save energy for later. By sunrise, the Warrens looked shaken. Lorraine looked pale. She whispered to Ed when the family couldn't hear, "It wants her soul." They knew this wasn't a prank. Not hysteria. Not mischief. It wasn't one spirit either. The Warrens believed something more sinister was hiding behind the voice of Bill Wilkins. Something using him like a mask. They warned Peggy that it wouldn't leave easily. They promised to continue investigating and praying. But even the Warrens, with all their experience, couldn't stay forever. They had dozens of other cases, other families begging for help. After their time in Enfield, they left investigators behind. But they didn't leave peacefully. The house seemed to stare at them as they walked away. Like a beast annoyed its prey escaped, for now. And for the Hodgsons, the haunting didn't stop. If anything, the entity got angrier knowing someone tried to challenge it. Janet's possession episodes continued. Objects still moved. Voices still echoed in the walls. The nights got heavier again. The house refused to let go. The Warrens had seen demonic infestations, but this case left a mark on them. Lorraine later admitted she felt a darkness here unlike anything before. Something old. Something patient. Something that wasn't haunting a house out of rage or confusion, but because it liked being there. The worst part wasn't the screams, the voices, or the levitation. It was the silence afterwards. The calm that felt like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike again, and the growing fear that maybe this house didn't just hold a demon, maybe the house itself had become one. After the Warrens left, life at the Hodgson house didn't suddenly reset back to normal. There wasn't some magical, end credits, moment. There was no priest standing in the doorway declaring victory. This case didn't end like a movie. It faded slowly, painfully, the way real hauntings do. Days turned into weeks. The newspapers moved on. Investigators came and went. Curious neighbors turned their attention to other gossip. The world outside got bored. Inside that small Enfield home, the fight wasn't over. Janet still woke up drenched in sweat, convinced someone had been standing over her bed. Peggy still heard whispers in the middle of the night, like an old radio tuning in and out. Things still moved occasionally. Not as violently as before, but enough to keep everyone on edge. Enough to remind them this thing didn't lose. It just got quiet. Real hauntings don't stop like a switch. They taper, they starve, they wait. And for the Hodgsons, that silence was somehow worse than the screaming. Because the question never left their minds, if it could do all that, what's stopping it from coming back? Janet tried to be normal again. Tried to laugh, tried to focus in school. She carried the weight of those nights like a scar you can't see. Students whispered behind her back. Teachers looked at her like she was unstable or seeking attention. Some people thought she faked it. Others thought she was cursed. Either way, she was isolated. There is a moment in every traumatic event where the world expects you to move on, but your body hasn't gotten the memo. That was Janet's life. Teenage girl stuck with memories nobody her age should ever have. The levitation, the voices, the feeling of being watched from the inside of her own skull. She said later in life that she didn't want fame. She didn't want attention. She just wanted sleep without fear. She wanted to be a kid again. The house had taken that from her. The younger kids also carried their own wounds. They didn't scream as much at night anymore, but they slept with lights on. Peggy stayed awake half the night, listening for sounds she hoped would never come again, and occasionally something would still happen. A knock. a toy shifting by itself, a cold draft sweeping through the room when every window was shut. Small reminders that the haunting hadn't truly ended. It just changed shape. Some investigators insisted the case was exaggerated. The skeptics always come. They always have explanations: teenage hysteria, stress, suggestion, group psychology. But skeptics don't have to live in the dark listening for footsteps that shouldn't exist. They don't have to hold a shaking child at 3 a.m. while she says a dead man is whispering in her ear. Years later, Janet moved away, started her own life. She tried not to talk about Enfield much. She said she didn't want the haunting to define her. But trauma has a way of traveling with you, no matter how many miles you put between you and the past. She still believes something was in that house. She still had moments where she woke up at night and felt a presence, like a shadow leaning too close. But she learned not to give it attention, not to feed it. Fear is fuel, and she refused to burn for it anymore. Peggy never blamed her kids. She never doubted them. She believed every moment of that nightmare, and she stayed in that house for years after the haunting slowed. Some people asked why. Why not move? Why not run as far as possible? But when you're a single mother with no money, surviving day to day, you don't get to run. Survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just staying where you are because you don't have a choice. Peggy lived there until her final days, and when she passed away inside that house, her family said something strange happened. The rooms felt cold again, like something woke up. Whatever had been waiting all those years realized the person who kept fighting it was gone. The family moved out shortly after. New tenants came, and they didn't last long. One family reported seeing a dark figure in the hallway. Their children woke up crying without knowing why. Doors closed by themselves. The feeling of being watched lingered everywhere. They left quickly. That's the thing about the Enfield house. People don't stay long. They never have. And even today, if you talk to the neighbors, some swear the place still feels wrong when you walk past it. Like the air changes. Like something in the walls remembers. The Warrens went on to other cases, bigger cases, more famous ones. But Lorraine always said Enfield stayed with her. She believed there was something there. Something ancient, cruel, manipulative. Something that didn't care about being photographed or studied. Something that enjoyed taking children and turning their innocence into fear. In interviews years later, Janet said she still believed the spirit was real. She didn't care if people doubted her. She lived through it. She didn't need the world to believe. She needed to survive. And she did. Here's the part everyone hates to hear: hauntings don't always end. Sometimes they just pause. They sink into the walls. They wait for the next weak moment, the next frightened heartbeat, the next person who's too tired, too stressed, too open. People always ask, why that house? Why that family? Maybe it was the location. Maybe it was a coincidence. Or maybe, just maybe, something chose them. Because some hauntings don't happen to places. They happen to people. And once something like that finds you, it never really lets go. The Enfield poltergeist didn't vanish. It didn't lose. It didn't die. It just went quiet. And quiet isn't comfort. Quiet is the warning. Quiet means it's waiting, somewhere, in the dark corners of an old house in Enfield, or in the memories of a little girl who grew up too fast, or in the space between your heartbeat and the next moment your lights flicker at night. It waits. And if there's one thing this case taught us, it's this: sometimes the scariest hauntings aren't the ones that scream. They're the ones that come back when everyone thinks the story is over.